Okay, and I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll get going. Um, okay, so Tom's off doing a lecture tour tonight. He's in London doing his, I think it's his opening one of the several he's doing. Um, so I'll be taking you through a consolidation of what we did last week, and then bringing in some of the other stuff we've done before on previous courses, and get a chance to do a bit of practice as well. So all very hands-on and hopefully relaxing. Just jump in with any questions if you have any, pop them in the chat, and hopefully look after yourselves as well. Just if you need a bit of space, then just take it for yourself and make sure you're looking after yourself. So I'm going to do a quick recap on last week, then we'll do a check-in. And then we're going to do some more of the finding common aims, so just finding what matters to people in these areas of their lives, getting a bit of practice on that. And then we'll cover foundations one and two, and then that will lead perfectly into a workshop on the barriers to change. So just really exploring and understanding how difficult it is often for people to change, empathizing with that struggle, which really helps as a foundation for conversations about sustainability. Um, then I'll do a little bit of input just to leave you with some thoughts about how to approach these conversations, and then I'll leave you to head off. So last week we looked at two goals. First one being just sustainable change. So um, is positive and impactful for others in unlocking action. So that's what we want it to be, and it builds towards a shift in society's mindset and culture. So quite often, if you have a conversation, they might not go away with a "I'm going to definitely do this," but you might have opened up a line of inquiry, and if you get a lot of people thinking sustainably, then the action will follow. And obviously, what we're talking about in Take the Jump are these six shifts, and there's lots to go out there in terms of what might be possible. And you can take an approach that might take on the hardest one or the easiest one and the low-hanging fruit. And the other thing that's we brought in is this countering of this polarization that's happening pretty much everywhere. So the second goal of less division. So stop exacerbating that division. We don't want to be creating any more. And if possible, we can do things to maybe alleviate it. Um, and then we're finding common ground between, what people currently do, what's important to them, and these shifts. So I'll remind you about those, about what we were looking at last week in terms of how to find ways that people might go down these paths and make changes. And these are a couple of Tom's slides about the way that we've got so much more in common than we've got that's dividing us. And yet often what's focused on is that little slither that is the proposed differences. So if you're a traditionalist, then the progressives, them, are some of these words you might get talked about. And if you're a progressive, then you might be thinking some of the traditionalists in these categories. But all of that misses out the vast amount we've got in common. So one of the things that we're trying to do here is bring that back in and acknowledge it. And then we gave you the analogy of the two mountains. So the discussions, if you're debating something, if you're arguing with somebody about something, it's usually at the level of the what, the solution. If you go down to the why, the underlying aims, there's a lot more common ground. And so one of the skills is being able to uncover what those aims are. And it's not always straightforward. You don't always know straight away, oh, why that's important to you. So it can take a little bit of digging, but you can do that together. And we did a practice in terms of finding common aims of two holiday destinations, just as a drill, really. Um, and then ultimately, you might find a new solution. It may not be straightforward, it may not be an easy solution, but at least you're working together rather than working against each other in finding that solution. And this was the example we actually used at the end of the workshop last time. So some of you were up for African Safari. I think we were playing the role of somebody who might go to Las Vegas and Disneyland. This is just an example of different aims, but actually you'd be quite happy to meet all of those aims, depending on, irrespective of where you really want to go. So the aims have a lot more common ground. And the next step would be to find a holiday in this case that would meet all of those aims. But that was just a drill. What we're interested in, Take the Jump, is for each of these areas of life. This one is about holidaying local, not going on the flight. Is to find out what the holiday aims are, or if you're talking about a different area of life, what the aims of their food might be, or the way they dress, and then throwing in the aim of the shift. In this case, the one flight every 3 years, and then you put them together, and then can you come up with a solution that meets all of those? And what that does, it means that they're going to retain all the value that they currently get from their life in that area, and also meet this additional criteria. So you combine the aims of the holiday and the shift and work together to find a holiday that meets, or yeah, find whatever area you're looking at. Okay, so we'll go over a bit more about that today as well. And this was the overview of the actual course. So we're in session 2 today, connecting on climate and change. So this is all about connection, these first two, and then we're talking a bit more about communication in the coming two, and then the final two will be about ambassadorship and what that might look like for you, and what you'd like to do next with it. Okay, so I'm going to get you to go into pairs in a moment and just do a quick check-in. So I'll give you a couple of minutes each. You can tell people your location again if you haven't done that already. And then I just thought I'd give you a chance to reflect on last week. So you could be referring to one of the shifts or sustainable change or the stuff that we did on reducing division and finding common ground. So anything that stood out for you, or indeed if you did some practice over the week, you could check in about how that went and share any thoughts. All right. So just a very simple check-in. I'll stop sharing on that one, and I'll put you into breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. Okay, I think they're just coming back in a couple of seconds. There we go. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to be doing a bit of plenary sharing a bit later, so I'll hear from a few people. But I wanted to go straight on to. I'm going to give you another chance to chat in pairs in this part. Just going to do another practice on just uncovering these aims, just see how that works. So I thought I'd just start off with just going over the ambassador context of this approach. So it's very much about helping people find how they might move forward in one of these shifts, but also bringing in this principle of finding common ground and reducing the division. So we're ultimately about making sustainable change that people can actually sustain. And if they're having to give up lots of stuff, which is kind of how sustainability is often portrayed, it's not very inviting. So one of the things we're going to be practicing later is joining them in their current world, particularly around how difficult change can sometimes be. Um, but also we want to join them in what really matters to them in each area of their life that the shifts relate to. And if you can do that, then you can support the process and project the process that you don't have to give all that up. And it wouldn't be worth it if you could, because we need to have great lives. Um, and the other thing that can happen with this is you're setting an intention to find common ground, and then that can sometimes be valuable in any conversation. So what you will then do when you've found that common ground is to explore together how a shift of their choice might be achieved without them losing out, or even better, with an improvement in what matters most to them. And that's where the unexpected joy, which some of you have done the course before will have known, is a real draw and an unexpected um, benefit of taking some of these things on. So this is another. Sorry, there's a question. Okay, no worries. Um, this is a summary of how we will go about uncovering the aims to help make a shift. So, on the left-hand side of the slide, we're going to be building or getting a sense or helping people understand for themselves what really matters to them in that part of their life. And once you know that, then you can start to think about what solutions might mean that that can continue, but within the boundaries of the shift. And we're going to be working with these two in the next exercise. So one of you will work with Eat Green, and the other one will just work with Travel Fresh. So you're looking at the area of food in their life or the area of how they get around. And you can adjust the questions that you might ask accordingly. And once you've uncovered the aims of that part of their life and you know the aim of the shift, you can combine them and see if you can find a solution that meets all of them, and particularly the ones that matter to them in terms of the aims for that area of their life. So last week we were talking a little bit about, well, what kind of questions work to uncover these aims? What's the best way to phrase
Mm.
these? And this is an ongoing inquiry, so these are just guidelines. They may work, there may be other ones that work better, so you can explore those. But the key is to phrase the question in a way that feels open, personal, and aspirational rather than restrictive or evaluative. You're not questioning them about the way they're living their life. You're just saying, okay, what matters to you? And these are some of the things you could choose. So when you choose what to eat, what really matters to you? Or you could say, um, when you choose how to get about, what really matters to you? What do you most want your food to give you or to help you feel? What are the most important things food needs to do for you? And so you might say something like, they might say something like, oh, well, I want it to be healthy. I don't want it to be ultra processed. And I want it to be, you know, low carbon or whatever it might be, or tasty, hopefully. Um, so that's just as a set of three questions that might help. And for each shift, you'll pop in the relevant bit about that area of your life to make it make sense. Okay. Um, so this is the exercise. I'm going to pop you back into pairs. I might give you different pairs. Um, and just
Cruise.
take it in turns. We're getting a bit of noise. Can you mute, please? Okay. Um, the So the uncovering aims in pairs, just ask those questions, just to dig a little bit deeper to get down to what matters to that person in that area of their life. What I'll do is I'll pop these into the chat as well, so that when you get into the breakout rooms, you can see the instructions. Is that going to go in? There we go. So you should see those in the chat as well. So I've given you the three questions that you might use, or you could use a different one. And sometimes you might need to keep asking the question or keep digging to get down to something that really matters. Because they might say, "Oh, I like fish," and it's okay. What is it about fish that you like? What's important to
So
you?
it
Mm,
really makes you
yeah,
think.
yeah. And the other thing with the sun, welcome back everybody. I'm just chatting to Aline who joined us just after the breakouts had started. Is if people want to go to a sunny place, you can ask them what is it about that they value, and then you can sometimes get that another way without necessarily the sun in the sky. Um, so you caught the end of a little conversation we were having while you were talking. I'd really like to hear from a few people about what worked about that, or what didn't work, or how did you get on exploring what matters to people in these two areas of their lives, and any reflections on good questions. Who'd like to come in? Guy.
Um, was talking to Kate in New Zealand, and the difference in the aspiration of Travel Fresh is to use your car less, or um, yeah, get out of your car. It sounds like in New Zealand they're way ahead. It's like get off the bus, cycle. It's just yeah. In the UK, is people love their cars so much.
Mm.
I think
And
it's a huge.
and did you get to
Um,
understand what it was about the car that was mattered? Is it stuff like getting there on time, being dry?
we didn't get anywhere near a car. We were on the bus,
Oh, right, okay.
and that but that was yeah, that was time was a big factor.
Yeah,
And also feeling relaxed and feeling safe, and a form of transport that's efficient.
yeah, absolutely. So
Mm.
even
Just to
just being really,
clarify, I do live in Wellington, Pornackie, which is the capital city. We spent a lot of money recently on cycling infrastructure, and I do
Mm.
work in the exact team that tries to deliver that. And so I can't really speak for the rest of New Zealand. I think it's still quite car centric out there. Our public
yeah,
transport between cities is not
yeah,
great. So yeah, just a side note before anyone else on this call from New
yeah,
Zealand is like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? We're all in the
Yeah,
same.
we've heard a lot about the New Zealand challenges because obviously you are quite spread out, and it's quite
Yeah.
rural in many places, so you don't have the bus network that a lot of places, even in the UK, we have maybe have some in some places. So, but these are the important things to be clear about. What really matters to people about getting around, and then you know what you're playing with, and then you can see, okay, well, could you do that? Maybe only on Wednesdays, but if the bus is there, or you could do a bike or whatever it might be. Brilliant. Thanks.
Is it okay to
Thanks,
ask a
Guy.
question to Kate? Or
Of course. Go on. Go ahead.
I was just curious, how do people with kids, how do they sort of does the cycling infrastructure sort of is there something in place that people with kids use in relation to that? Or
Okay.
Um,
Kate.
yeah, we've kind of rolled out recently with barriers between the cycleways and the roads. It's been like a really big infrastructure project over the past few years. And it's also there's quite a lot of companies in the city that will rent or hire or sell you a cargo bike. And so it's just like a big beefier sort of e-bike. It's very hilly here too, so e-bikes are kind of the go. Um, and yeah, there's like kids in a little trailer on the back a lot of the time is what I see. Although, in sort of seats, but I think because it's kind of separated from the road, on the main streets at least, people feel a little bit safer.
Mm,
But yeah, I guess also not ideal for everyone. There's probably not
yeah.
over 50% of parents doing that. I think it's still probably a bit niche.
We've got a few of those cargo bikes. They're bikes with a long seat at the back, and a couple of kids can sit on it. And I've seen
Yeah.
several in St Albans, and the kids seem to love it. So
Yeah.
even just
It's,
having one or two of those around inspires the others to go along. Yeah. So that's the kind of changes that we can facilitate here. Thanks, everybody.
sounds
Okay,
great.
Anne,
Thanks.
can I bring you in, Anne?
Sure. Yeah. So I was talking with Rebecca, and she chose Eat Green, and she wants to reduce plastics on packaging. Um, she spends more time reading labels these days. She's trying to avoid palm oil. I said I've got an app on my phone that you can aim at a package and it can read whether palm oil's been used. Um, Her community or houses just where she is, they have gardens like they and when the guy who owned the land died, then they reconfigurated the gardens to be closer to the house. But her piece was she had the sheds of the other gardens, and so she's slowly demolishing the sheds and having to get out the concrete just to get down to the ground and have a garden again. Her son likes to eat meat. She would prefer not to. She wants to help the planet.
Ah, right,
That's why
great.
she wants to
So
eat green.
that's an interesting one, isn't it? 'Cause if you've got, I mean, what I heard there is you're getting down to some solutions even at this stage, which is fine if people are okay with that. Um, and also just asking those questions about what really matters to them. So you mentioned a few things like plastic and so on. But then if people might start talking about their families, and of course then that's a conversation you can't really have with them because it's not them, that unless they're there. But you could actually in your conversation, pass on the skills that they might then have that subsequent conversation about, okay, what's important to the son about food, and how might they get that in another way. So the principle of asking those questions would be still relevant. Um, Anna, we've got time to hear from you, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, for sure. So I spoke to Catherine and I asked her about eating less meat. But what I really wanted to talk about was just how long it takes to build the relationship, to get the context about the other person's life and kind of what motivates them. So I didn't feel like I didn't even get to the eating less meat part, or we just barely got on that and we were already over time. So just kind of reflecting that it takes it like allow lots of time and have lots of patience when you're having conversations
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and also, yeah, you're imagining we're going to do plenty of these practices, and I'm hearing that maybe a little bit longer in each of these exercises would be helpful. Um, and there's this just you're improvising a conversation to make it relevant to the person who's standing in front of you, and that's going to be slightly different every time. So, one of the things I was reflecting on in terms of how you might best use the stuff we're talking about here, it could be just a mindset that you go in with the intention of finding what those aims are. There's no formula. It's just an intent. And I think I was saying last week that quite often that can go a long way. If you have the intention to find the aims, what really matters to them, then you're more likely to find them. Um, just like if you're trying to find common ground rather than win an argument, it can be transformative just having that intention. And if somebody else has the same intention, then you're definitely going to get it right. So that's the kind of thing that we're also experimenting with. Okay, thanks everybody. I'm going to just share screen again. I'm going to do a little bit more input and then get you talking again. Um, this time you'll be in F3. But I want to just cover the foundations very briefly. I imagine a lot of you know these inside out, but I'll get you talking about these in a moment. Um, so the foundations are almost like the building blocks of what matters to the approach of Take the Jump. And the first one here is trying is enough, so just start. And this is really emphasizing that it's whatever low bar of entry that is appropriate for every single person or whoever you're talking to. And by taking even a small step, that's a step in the direction that we want people to be traveling. So, and it's setting that direction as well. So if you feel overwhelmed, which we're going to come on to a little bit in a moment, a lot of people are overwhelmed with the enormity of the challenge. But if you can send them, in or help them in the right direction, then that momentum will follow, and that approach will bear fruit over time rather than just immediately. So, um, making people feel good about what they can do, absolutely not feeling them, making them feel guilty about what they're not doing. So that's the general first principle. And it links very closely to the second foundation, which is no more us and them. And this is something that you've probably all experienced, and maybe you've even dished it out. I've certainly done a bit of that um, when I wasn't really aware of what the negative impact of that. It's very easy to feel exasperated because if you're taking on a lot of these and making a lot of effort because you care about it, to then see other people not doing the same. Um, and it's understandable and it's okay to feel that way. But what doesn't work is to communicate that. That's when things don't work. So really trying to understand what it's like to be in that position of having a certain way of life and it being difficult to change. Um, so I think we had this slide last week. This feeling like an exasperated environmentalist. What are some of the things it says? Yes, I know it's hard to change, but we don't have time to wait because for people to find this easy. Um, I give up on humanity. People deserve what they get because this is who we are. So you're really resigned and cynical with that approach. Drives me crazy. People think that because they recycle, they can fly 10 times a year. I'm sure some of us have thought these things. Some of us might have said them. Um, So if you feel those things, it's perfectly okay to feel those things. But when we let those feelings frame our interactions, then people feel alienated and they feel pushed away. So that's something to really, really be mindful of. And then what we're going to spend the next discussion on is just tuning in to how difficult change can be. And if you've done a lot of working on reducing your environmental impact, you may have to think back to what it was like when you were doing that, when you first came across wanting to eat plant-based diets or not to fly, how that might have been a strain at that particular time. But really tuning into the anxiety and overload, it's also scary. I just feel powerless. The systems around us that make it often very difficult. It's so much cheaper to fly than to get on the train. Certainly the case in UK and Europe. Um, Time and energy, I'd love to do more, but I have kids to look after and a job to do. Just don't have the headspace. Social pressure, my friends laugh at me if I buy secondhand clothes. Isolation, I don't know anyone else who talks about this or is trying this sort of change. So you'd feel like out of the group. My partner wants to eat meat every day. We've just been talking about that one. Um, Habits and life history. I've always driven to work and I can't get used to the bus. So that and a whole lot more is probably stuff that we can relate to. So what we're going to do is just explore this a little bit. And the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is to do a bit of journaling. Um, so I'm going to give you 4 minutes, I think, on this one. Just to grab your pen and paper or whichever preferred form of writing you have. You could type it into a Google Doc if you like. Um, pick a shift if you'd like to, just one of those, and maybe the hardest one. You want the one that you find the hardest, or you did find the hardest if you've already accomplished all of these, or the one that you're finding hardest now, and say why. Just to do a bit of self exploration about what's difficult about that, what you notice. I'll give you 4 minutes. Okay. If you pause on your journaling, in a moment I'm going to get you to go into groups of three. Um, and just to have, let's bring that in the chat, um, 2 or 3 minutes each, just sharing anything you'd like to share about what you find difficult about taking on these shifts, or one in particular. Um, I'll share you one of my challenges. I'm still working on the totally plant-based diet, and I like things that I can just put in the air fryer and cook with my potatoes and other stuff up in my allotment. But finding it really hard to find a really good fish substitute, and I don't want to have um, ultra processed foods, which is a lot of the meat free stuff is ultra processed. So that's just one of the things I just find particularly challenging, and always looking for ways around that. And it could be very different for you, but it'd be good to share what that is. Okay, so I'll give you 10 minutes in groups of three. There's one, two, so you got a little bit more time each, and then we'll come back and we'll hear from a few people. All right, good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Um, Hope that was useful. Be good to hear from a few people. What we're trying to do here is really tune into the challenges of doing this, empathizing and having people know that we understand where they are and coming from that place of connecting. So anybody want to come in on anything they noticed about exploring their own difficulties with shifts and understanding other people's? or even just sharing which one you find hardest and why. Um, anybody like to anybody like to share?
Okay.
Confessions, Anne, want to come in?
Well, I think plant-based. I've tried going like trying veganuary a few times, like with my husband, but he's quite a big meat eater. So the 1st of February he'll go back to eating meat, and I can like stay vegan for a few months, but eventually, because he's always got cheese in the fridge and he keeps buying chicken and stuff like that,
Mm,
I'll end up going back to being um vegetarian and then I end up eating meat. So it's quite hard really. And
mm,
I found like I heard that the ultra processed stuff, like there's lots of meat substitutes because of the fiber content, it's not actually as bad as the meat equivalent.
right.
But I do find with those, I don't like all the plastic, and quite a lot of them are like heavily um,
Yeah,
packaged,
yeah.
and some of them taste too much like meat as well because I'm not really a massive fan of meat.
Oh, okay, right.
It's usually when I'm craving, when I need protein, then I feel myself wanting to eat meat.
Yeah.
But
I
I
mean,
went, okay, go on.
no, I'm hearing that taste is important, but it may not be the taste of meat, for you. And also the healthy stuff is important to you as well. And you've also got a family situation, so that's having an impact as well. But you're tuned into the reality of the difficulty of this, right?
Yes, I mean, my husband will quite often eat vegan food because he just enjoys different foods.
Mm,
But then other meals he will have meat though, so he won't stick to just vegetarian or vegan.
Sounds like you're doing brilliantly. And finding other dishes, you could experiment with stuff, and then that's another one that's not meat based. So that's the very sort of thing that if you're talking to somebody about shifts, you can
Yeah,
acknowledge and support and encourage. So brilliant.
yeah,
Thanks, Katie.
he's not keen on beans though, which is a problem.
Well, that's one of the inquiries, isn't it? What is this people like variety and different types of food as well, and what other options might there be? And that's one advantage of being in a group of people looking for different solutions. So the community can help with that. Thanks, Katie. Anybody else want to share about their difficulties? Oh, Anne, you were coming in, weren't you? You want to unmute?
There we go. Yes, uh, this is like my second time having a go at, well, you say having a go, doing the ambassador training. So I started a few years ago and have been getting through the, 6, and here in New Zealand we have 7, which is planting something. And so I run a small group of restoration. And the toughest one I found was really getting to change the system. And
Mm,
how do you do that? And with a lot of people grumbling in different groups that I'm in about how things are getting going in New Zealand or the world, and I go like, no, I would normally say to somebody like that, well, if you're going to grumble about it, just get out there and do something about it. And
mm,
so, and here I was actually writing submissions, and I'm going, oh my gosh, I've never written submissions before about what's bad and going on. So I decided to run for council. So in the latest elections, and bring my voice of to, you could say, to Nelson, where I am in New
mm,
Zealand. And the good thing is that I got in front of a lot of the public in the Meet the Candidate gatherings, and was able to talk about, clean water to swim and drink, and for the marine bay out in front of us. And though I didn't get in, I spread the word about nature-based solutions, and that's why I really showed up for me that I'm passionate about nature-based solutions.
mm,
And there is a group here in New Zealand that came across WEALL, and so it's like they have created us, say how to run a society, and so that the forefront is nature and community. And so I've got to get back into, because I only read excerpts of what they had there, to grab that again. And another one, a lady on a webinar talking about from the mountains to the sea. So you've got to look after all those areas to make your environment healthy, because we're already at 1.5 and it's just been to a biodiversity day with various groups coming together for that, and they're talking about how to transient plants from in the North Island into the South Island and is that ethical? But we want them to survive, because they're not going to survive in the heat that's happening.
I mean, lots of things there. Thanks, Anne, for that. Lots of different areas that could be explored in conversations regarding Take the Jump, particularly. And I noticed also you were referring to nature, and it's interesting. That's one of the areas where has broad appeal. If you talk to traditionalists, they're very, very interested in the natural world and preserving. Um, and so that's some established common ground to be able to tune into if you're having these kind of conversations. And also, yeah, you're very present, and you've been talking about the challenges as well. So that's what that last exercise was asking us to focus on is can we tune in just generally to the difficulties people have with taking on these things, and does that help as a foundation for having a conversation about what they might do? Brilliant. Thanks, Anne. Any other quick thoughts on the enormity of these challenges? If there isn't,
I can just say quickly from our group, because we all chose the same thing to focus
okay.
on and had sort of crossover reasons. We chose the holiday local one, and there's a couple of us that were talking about having family abroad and how that can be really difficult, whether it's a a son or a daughter or a stepson or whoever that is. That it kind of there's an imperative to it feels like there's an imperative that overrides almost in some ways, but and then other things were just about that kind of love of traveling and the time needed sometimes to get somewhere by not taking flights, and that might be constrained by school holidays, or it might be constrained by other things, and even like if you're going with a group and where they might want to go, and various things. It's not always, sometimes you're not always making a decision just for yourself. It's not where do I want to go on holiday, or I won't fly. It's kind of other pressures outside of yourself.
Yeah, so which is what Katie was referring to in terms of the other shifts as well. That if you've got family that have different aims, different needs, then that's something to also work with. The family abroad one is a huge one. It comes up a lot in Take the Jump conversations, and it's just something to acknowledge, isn't it? So what's really important if you're asking people what really matters to people, then that's going to be very, very high on the list. Connecting with family. And so it's just acknowledging that and saying, okay, so what could you do, and what are the ways of preserving that quality of connection that you have with your family, or want to have, and doing it in other ways potentially. So it's not saying you have to, but there are other ways of connecting, and yeah, exploring those together. Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. We're nearly the end. I just wanted to do a bit of final input, and present you some slides that Tom put together for the course, and then I'll leave you to reflect on those between now and next week. So a lot of them is covering stuff that we've mentioned, and is kind of implied by the conversation we've been having about change being difficult. Let me just find. So you'll get these slides as well, so you could be able to reflect on these. I was going to take you through these. We can go through these together. So these are some reflections for communicating. So remembering, this is what we've been doing today, remembering how hard it is to change. It can be easy to get frustrated with others, but it takes time depends on lots of factors, many beyond our control. So just remembering that is a foundation really for all these kind of conversations. So our goal is therefore to help people to take the next step that's possible for them. So that's the next step is the only thing people can do really. Um, and if we can encourage that step, then they could be on a wonderful journey. And the other one here, the perfect argument combined with heavy pressure only works on people who are ready and are ready for change. And for everyone else, it makes change less likely. We know this from the research. Change is a long process. This is not something we bring about with a clever argument. And what happens, I'm sure you're all familiar with, you get this backfire effect. People feel a bit put upon, and then they double down and says, well, actually, you're not going to respect me, then why should I do anything you're saying? Um, it's not really a workable way forward. As isn't feeling that you're a bad person. If you feel that, then that's not going to get us anywhere. So if that's being implied, even if it's not being mentioned, that's going to have quite a big impact on what people might do. So shifting our orientation from I'm the righteous one and you must follow my way to we're fellow explorers. This is exactly what we were doing last week and this week about finding common ground. So you share this together and then you explore possible solutions together. So it's asking about listening to and acknowledging the other struggles in the situation. Um, so meeting people where they are is a starting point and honoring that and just listening and making sure people feel heard. You can talk about your own struggles. That's really a way of opening up and becoming a bit more vulnerable and gaining their confidence and trust. We're all hypocrites, and that's okay. So we can't possibly, as human beings, be perfect. That builds a connection, diffuses worry of the need to be perfect, or being called a hypocrite, because quite often we do get labeled that if you're not doing everything perfectly every time. So having a sense of humor about all this is important too. Don't belittle the small steps people are really proud of. Build on them. This is a quite common thing with things like recycling, because a lot of people see recycling as being like a really important thing, and it is. But obviously, a lot of progressives and environmentalists realize actually that's not enough. We need to do more, and inadvertently can be undermining of that. Whereas that act of thinking about recycling is exactly the kind of mindset that we want to be creating in all the areas. So if you're doing it in one area, then that's going to help. It's going to help, cross-contaminate thinking about that in another way, in another area of your life. So rejoice if people are doing that, and then draw them into potentially a conversation about what they might do next. And then finally, it's a balance. So encourage people. Small changes are a good start, if that's all that's possible. And then be clear on the destination. These shifts need to be by the early 30s. We obviously know the urgency of the situation. Um, and, this as an approach is a little bit different. We're talking about building a movement of people coming together and finding new ways to do this and working together to help it make it a bit easier to do. And then give people emotional ownership of their own change. Many people want to feel like this is their journey, which it is. Lasting change requires that people feel like it's their own decision and that they need to do it, which is something that we'll be talking about in a bit more detail next week. And we're nearly there, and then I'll open the floor for any final comments. But the suggestion for next week is, well, for the practice between now and next week, is to consider some of the people in your life or around you or that you see, and maybe even ask them what it is that makes it difficult for them to shift. So you could be even just thinking about that, or you can actually be asking people and just exploring the terrain of change, really, and tuning into that. So the more that we can understand that terrain, the more we're going to be able to tune into the challenges that we might be somebody in front of us who might be experiencing. And people are often open to this question. So if you don't, if you don't start from the point of view that they should change, okay. So as long as you go into without that intent, people will be probably happy to share their thoughts on things. And there's some ongoing material, so you can look at the slides and the recording. I'll send those out. And you've got their website, and if you want to do a bit more research, you can do. I think probably all of you here are on the WhatsApp group, but there's a link there. I'll just share that link in the chat if you haven't joined, and you can give people updates, so you can ask questions on there. There's a QR code as well. And the other thing is, I don't know if anybody's done it, is to have a go at the Take the Jump Shift chatbot helper. So I think some of you had a go. The feedback we've been has been quite positive. It's quite quick, and it mimics a little bit the conversations we're training you to have. So really tuning into what matters to somebody about that area of their life, and then the chatbot automatically explores ways that you might achieve it in a very gentle and supportive way. So have a look at that if you haven't tried it already, and let us know what you think. I know AI is not everybody's cup of tea, for one reason or another, one being the environmental impact. My personal view is that actually we should be embracing this technology to make it better, and if this helps people use less energy, then that can be a good thing. So that's about it from me. I'm happy to open up the floor for any final questions or comments, and the floor's yours. How are you finding it all? Anne?
So I think I noticed that it was possibly people might be feel quite isolated. So it would be good for people to, say, you could say, get on that app and feel supported. One of the messages is that you try something and you're doing something for the earth, and so you can jump for joy. I think we forget that the jump for joy and make you feel really good doing that.
Absolutely, yeah. So the joy stuff, Nan's done the course before, and I know some of you have as well. We're doing the joy stuff next week. Not that we can't have joy this week, but yeah, that's a crucial part of what we're trying to do. And that's also linked into the finding the common ground. It's just really we want to make sure that people retain the value of that area of life as well, and the joy could become also there, if possible. So certainly that possibility. Thanks for saying that, Anne. Anything else? Any other questions?
I just wanted to add that as much as you feel you're doing the right thing, there's always someone who's going to step further. And I'm a very competitive person, so I always find myself, comparing what I've done. I have a low carbon, I live in a low carbon household. I've got solar panels, I've got a heat pump, I've got an electric car. Kat, who is my manager, she's vegan, and I'm still comparing myself against her. And when I'm doing a lot of presentations, I always end it with, it's not about perfection, it's about progress.
Yeah.
And the other things I say is, you're probably doing more than you think you are. So yeah. I have to now remind myself that, as much as I still have a car, as much as I still do take flights, or pay for flights for my mom to come and see me, within reason, I'm trying my best you know. So my advice to people who are trying is, you're doing the best you can in this moment in time. So
Yeah,
just continue that.
absolutely. Thanks, Elaine. Um, the other thing is exactly what you've just been saying, is being a beacon. If you're inspired by your boss, then you're going to be that inspiration also for other people. And that's one of the things about being in a movement. We're not just working on ourselves, it's being an inspiration and a beacon for others to also um, do what they can. Absolutely. Thanks, Elaine. Anything else? Other than that, I'll leave you to your evenings or days in the case of those down under. Um, I'll see you next week. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks
Thank
very much.
you. Bye.
Thank you.